Something strange just happened on the battlefield in Ukraine. Not a tiny shift, not a symbolic win. We're talking about over 200 square kilometers retaken in just 5 days. Ukraine's biggest territorial comeback in 2.5 years. And here's the twist. This didn't happen with some dramatic Hollywood-style tank charge blasting through Russian lines while epic music plays. Nope. This victory came from something far more dangerous to Russia, Ukraine outsmarting them. Because while Moscow was busy announcing victories, Ukraine was busy quietly erasing them. And what unfolded next is less like a traditional offensive and more like a tactical chess match where one side suddenly realized half its pieces were already gone. Let's rewind for a second, but before we rewind, join the front line. Like and subscribe. Hold tight so we see you again. Russian military sources suddenly started admitting the situation in western Zaporizhzhia had sharply worsened. Translation from military speak into normal human language? Things were going very, very badly. Ukrainian forces launched attacks across a sector roughly 20 kilometers wide, and not where Russia expected. That's important, because for weeks, attention had been focused northeast. Analysts, bloggers, armchair generals on the internet, everyone was watching the same direction. Meanwhile, Ukraine shifted pressure somewhere else entirely, near the Dnipro River sector. It's the battlefield equivalent of guarding your front door, while someone casually walks in through the kitchen. And suddenly, Russian reports started sounding confused. Villages Moscow previously claimed were captured, maybe not captured. Settlements supposedly secured days earlier, actually contested. Some areas thought to be under Russian control. Turns out they never really were. At that point, you have to wonder, were these gains real or just captured on credit? Because once Ukraine started pushing, those claims began collapsing faster than a sandcastle in high tide. And this is where things get interesting. Ukraine didn't just attack randomly. They targeted logistics and isolation first. Think of it like this. Instead of punching your opponent in the face, you quietly lock the exits, cut the lights, and take away their phone signal. Only then do you move in. Ukrainian forces advanced along the E-105 highway south of Stepnohursk, inserting assault troops into nearby settlements like Plavny. That move wasn't just about territory. It threatened to cut Russian units off from their main positions. And once a unit is isolated on a modern battlefield, it's basically running on borrowed time. No supplies, no reinforcements, no safe retreat, just drones overhead, and Ukrainian artillery dialing in coordinates like it's ordering delivery. And Ukraine didn't stop there. Strikes reportedly targeted river crossings north of Vasilivka, another sign the goal wasn't flashy headlines. It was battlefield suffocation. Because when bridges and crossings disappear, trapped troops don't just lose ground, they lose options. And wars are often decided by which side runs out of options first. Now here's the strategic twist. Ukraine's top commander, General Syrsky, emphasized something very specific. Yes, liberating territory matters, but preserving soldiers' lives and maintaining combat readiness comes first. That tells us this isn't some reckless land grab offensive. It's controlled pressure, measured attacks, slowly tightening the screws while avoiding unnecessary losses. Basically, the opposite of the old-school throw bodies at the problem doctrine we've seen elsewhere in this war. And according to Ukrainian frontline voices, the situation remains tense. Russian forces are committing massive resources to attacks, digging into destroyed villages, abandoned houses, anything that offers cover, which makes Ukraine's progress even more notable. Because this isn't happening against a collapsing enemy. It's happening against one still pushing hard. That's like gaining yardage while the other team is blitzing every single play. Then came the confirmation from international analysts. Between Wednesday and Sunday, Ukraine recaptured about 201 square kilometers. To put that into perspective, that's roughly equivalent to Russia's gains during some entire months of fighting, compressed into less than a week. And suddenly, What looked like a frozen front line didn't look so frozen anymore. It looked fragile. Because modern front lines in this war aren't clean lines on a map. They're messy, intermixed, full of so-called gray zones, areas where both sides hold scattered positions across villages, tree lines, and trenches. Meaning control isn't about sweeping advances, it's about finding weak spots, slipping through, resupplying your own isolated troops, and systematically clearing out the enemies. Which is exactly what Ukraine appears to be doing. Not dramatic, not flashy, but brutally effective. And if this pattern feels familiar, it should. Because something very similar has been unfolding elsewhere. Up near Kupiansk, where updates went quiet for a while. The kind of quiet that usually means either nothing is happening, or something very important is. And what emerged from there paints an even clearer picture of Ukraine's evolving strategy. But the Kupiansk situation doesn't just show how Ukraine gains ground, it shows what happens after Russian troops get cut off. And trust me, it's not pretty.